Putin plans to announce he will be president for another 6 years. He will remain in power until he turns 77. Vladimir Putin is said to be planning to seek another term in the Kremlin next year, continuing his 23-year tenure as Russia's president or prime minister. Despite the war, the president has recently entered campaign mode for the first time since pre-pandemic, visiting rural areas and even posing for photos with fans. In recent weeks, the president has been seen taking selfies, kissing young girls on the head and taking other children to the Kremlin during a business trip in Dagestan. Made a smile on his face at the meeting in Moscow, unlike the long meeting he used for rare meetings during the coronavirus period. Elections will be held next year. Putin will be 77 years old if re-elected to a full term as Russia's president. This is despite the problems in Ukraine and questions about her body. The Patriot Foundation was created by President Putin's law to raise money for veterans. This is not a democracy as it is currently controlled by Putin's cousin, the 51-year-old wife of the Siberian governor, Anna Tsivalieva. Russian media outlet Vyorstka said, when there is a demand for elections for the new term, the money will go back to Putin, and perhaps to those who receive assistance from the president. The United Russia Party will accept Putin's request to stay in power for another year. The next Russian election will be held in March 2024, and Putin is likely to vote amid speculation that Wagnerian mercenary leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, 62, has political ambitions and would like pre-election comments published. Putin has been the president of Russia since 1999, with the exception of 4 years between 2008 and 2012. However, when Dmitry Medvedev became president, it was known that Putin was behind the scenes of the Kremlin. Putin today received support from the president of Belarus and his friend Alexander Lukashenko. Look, health research is being done all over Russia, he said. People have 74% confidence in Putin. Do you doubt he'll win if he goes to vote? If he has that confidence, don't doubt it. Although Russia is accused of rigging the elections, critics of Putin say that Putin cannot lose. So all the political enemies of the country were killed, imprisoned, or forced to leave the country. Apart from the Wagnerian President Prigozhin and, to some degree, Putin's nemesis and anti-corruption activist Alexei Navalny, there are no other elected Russian politicians due to Kremlin control. Media tightness has a large platform. Putin is believed to have cancer and is rumored to be showing early signs of Parkinson's disease. The global pandemic and subsequent events have made him very wary of meeting people. Many people still need to be in isolation for a week or two before they can see him. His health has been called into question because of his decision to let hundreds of thousands of people die in an unforgivable war. Rumor has it that it doubles, especially if the president is close to the crowd. Although critics believe the trip has doubled, it has recently increased its trips outside of Moscow, including near the war zone. If Vladimir Putin wants to do more than complete his 6-year tenure as president of Russia, he must show less of his accustomed arrogance, master the art of compromise by reconciling with his opponents, and return to clan control. Unlike the powerful leader, who resigned in 2008 after 8 years as president, Putin will have to assert his authority soon after he is sworn in on Monday if he wants to avoid his third term in the Kremlin. But despite being threatened by the biggest opposition since he came to power in 2000, the man who turned 60 in October, grew up in the Soviet era, worked as a KGB spy, and created a political system that allowed him to effectively dominate politics across every business economy. It can be said that anything in Russia that does not show the ability to change its structure to drive change is politically and financially unstable and has convinced its strong supporters in economy, business, and politics to become a successful person. There is no sign that the elite has abandoned him, but I think they were shaken throughout the entire attack, so he must tread carefully, said the Western chief, whose was taken in Moscow. Putin has to contend with competition in his own camp, which includes longtime oil czars Igor Sechin and Dmitry Medvedev. Outgoing President Dmitry Medvedev will switch jobs with his mentor and friend to become president next week. Conservatives and liberals are vying for positions in Medvedev's new cabinet, a decision that shows how much he and Medvedev will be replaced to improve air supplies, even though Putin will pick the roster. Medvedev's former political advisor, Gleb Pavlovsky, said, "Medvedev does not look like a man ready for a strong government. Our government seems split in two." Sources close to the government said that Medvedev and Prime Minister Sechin had a disagreement. Sechin has confirmed his position by arranging 2 oil exploration projects with state oil company Rosneft in the past few months. Medvedev may become president, but whatever name Ezin uses, it will always be important to Putin, a source close to the government said in recent months. Other options for independence or control of the business sector will consider selling stakes in state companies based on certain reforms and business plans to reduce the government's role in business. No more men. Putin is expected to make a triumphant comeback after 4 years as president, in which he controlled Russia's leadership from the 2008 to 2009 global financial crisis, and helped run a country of more than 140 million people. But after years of only spectacle opposition in a parliament led by his own party, he now faces opposition outside of the mainstream political system, replaced by the biggest challenge since he came to power in 2000. Bravery. It's the very handsome guys that made Putin so popular in Russia when he was at his peak, like riding horses and killing tigers with a tranquilizer gun. But more difficult is the habit of seeking total control and learning from political dissidents and the middle class who want more freedom. Carnegie Center director Dmitry said, largely, he's a symbol of the past, at least 12 years ago. To me, he doesn't look like a man of the future. Moscow, said Dmitry Trainin. The opposition will try to consolidate its rights by objecting to local elections, despite widespread protests from December to March alleging electoral fraud. $1. The $9 trillion economy is doing better than most of Europe, but is vulnerable to fluctuations in oil prices, Russia's main export. The budget, meanwhile, is under pressure due to Putin's campaign finances. Putin said he wants to attract more foreign investment and end Russia's over-reliance on energy exports, by improving the business environment and reducing corruption and bureaucracy. He didn't say what to do. Lack of interest among the electorate. If things are tough in Russia, Putin can try to counter Western rhetoric abroad in the right arena to gain support, as he has done in the past. But as president, he has never relinquished his hold on foreign policy, so a major policy change is unlikely. The most likely conflict is the one with the United States and NATO over Europe's missile defense, but NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen said Thursday that he still needs an agreement with Moscow. Putin responded to the opposition by allowing limited elections and making registration easier for both parties. If he wants to stay in power, he will reform more and make gestures to the opposition. He returned to Russia in a very different way than when he left 4 years ago. The desire to control all aspects of economic, social, and political life certainly does not work, said political analyst Boris Makarenko. You should make the most of the humble power and resources that are still at your disposal, and that means using the law of divide and conquer and compete with one another. If he starts to think that won't happen, that will help him. Medvedev's comments. He and his mentor Putin reportedly sought re-election and became prime minister at the end of his term in 2018, despite suggesting he was here for a long-term term. The longest-serving Kremlin leader since Joseph Stalin fell out of favor and often dissatisfied or invites violence. Putin will be back, but who cares? Everything will be as before, said 36-year-old Larissa Kovalyova while shopping in Moscow. 71-year-old retired Vladimir Anakin, what will Putin change? Look at the problems in Greece, Italy, and Spain. It will be a problem for us too. Can't prevent this from happening.